Before they became hip-hop's greatest tragedy, Biggie and Tupac were in the same studio, creating history. What happened in that room changed everything. November 1993, New York City, a studio called Quad Recording. In a few years, this building would be the site of Tupac's shooting, the moment that sparked the East Coast-West Coast War. But tonight was different. Tonight, the two greatest rappers of all time were about to create something nobody's ever heard before. This is the story they don't want you to know. To understand this night, you need to understand where these two came from. Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G., born in Brooklyn, raised on Fulton Street, started selling crack at 12 years old. By 17, he was making serious money, but he wanted more. He started rapping on street corners, doing freestyle battles, getting a reputation. In 1992, a demo tape made it to Puff Daddy. Puff signed him immediately. Bad Boy Records was born, 3,000 miles west, Tupac Shakur. Born in New York, actually, but raised in the struggle. His mother was Black Panther royalty, Afeni Shakur, a revolutionary. Pac grew up political, conscious, aware. He studied theater, poetry, Shakespeare. He wasn't just street, he was art. By 1993, Tupac had already dropped 2 albums. He was a movie star, he was everywhere. But he wanted respect as a real rapper. East Coast cats didn't take him seriously yet. They thought he was an actor playing rapper. So when he came to New York in late 93, he had something to prove. November 30th, 1993. A rapper named Little Sean had a session booked at Quad Recording. Little Sean was signed to Uptown Records. He was working on his debut album. Now here's where it gets interesting. Also at Quad that night, Puff Daddy, bringing his new artist. The notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur was already inside. Now what you need to understand is this. The East-West thing, in November 93, it didn't exist yet. Rappers from different coasts worked together all the time. Dr. Dre produced Snoop, but also worked with East Coast artists. Ice Cube collaborated with New York producers. It was all love. So when Tupac walked into Quad Studios that November night and saw Biggie Smalls already in the booth, there was no tension, no beef, no drama. There was respect. According to everyone who was there that night, this is what happened next. They started talking about music, about lyrics, about the game. Biggie had just recorded Party and Bullshit, his first single. He played it for Pac. Then Tupac played something he was working on, a track that would later become Keep Your Head Up. And Biggie, he lost his mind, and then someone had an idea. What if they did a song together? November 30th became December 1st. Most of the studio had cleared out. Little Sean had finished his session and left. But Biggie and Tupac, they weren't leaving. They had the engineer stay. They had Puff stay. And they started working on something that nobody's ever heard, in collaboration, between the notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur. The track was built around an Isley Brothers sample. Soulful, smooth, classic New York sound. The engineer laid down the beat. Puff was nodding his head. And then Biggie started freestyling. Then Pac jumped in. And what Pac did, nobody expected. They were telling the same story from 2 different angles. It was perfect. They went back and forth, trading verses, building off each other. Puff was already planning the rollout in his head. This was going to be the collaboration. East Coast meets West Coast. Bad Boy meets Death Row before anyone even knew what Death Row would become. The engineer pressed stop after the 3rd take. They listened to it back. Pac looked at Big and said, "Yo, we should do a whole album like this." And Big agreed. They made plans to meet again, to record more. Puff started making calls about pressing the single. The engineer made a DAT tape of the session. They left Quad Recording Studios at 4:37 a.m. None of them knew that they would never finish that album. Because exactly 1 year later, Tupac would return to Quad Studios, and everything would change. November 30th, 1994. Exactly 1 year after that session, Tupac was shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios. He survived, but something else died that night. Tupac blamed Biggie, blamed Puff, blamed the entire East Coast. He believed they set him up. The collaboration, the album they planned, never happened. The friendship, over. In 1996, Tupac was murdered in Las Vegas. 6 months later, Biggie was killed in Los Angeles. The greatest tragedy in hip-hop history. But that tape? The one from November 30th, 1993? It still exists. The engineer who recorded that session, he still has the DAT. He's never released it, out of respect. Imagine if that single had dropped in early '94. Imagine if they'd done that album. Would the beef have still happened? Would they both still be alive? We'll never know. But for one night in November 1993, hip-hop had everything it needed. This is Behind the Bars, where hip-hop's real stories live. Next time, the beef that ended a career. 50 Cent versus J. Rule, the real story. Like if this changed your perspective. Comment what collaboration you wish happened. Subscribe for the truth behind the bars. Drop a comment. Tell me what lost collaboration you want to hear about next. Follow Behind the Bars on Instagram and Twitter for daily hip-hop history.